Thank you. And that brings us this evening to our consent calendar. Just one meeting this time, in the council meeting of August 20th. Those minutes were included in your packet. And I would entertain additions, corrections, or a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Councillor Belts, and the second, Councillor Oberst. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And seeing none opposed, moving on to public comments. And I didn't receive any here tonight at the dais. And Phyllis, were any submitted prior to this?
There were no comments submitted, Mayor Coontz.
Thank you. That brings us this evening to a special presentation. I would like to welcome our local partners from Chemeketa Community College to join us at the table. Have you, both of you, come on up. And when you speak, you'll press the microphone. The button will be red, which is counterintuitive to it being on. Hopefully speak into it so they can hear you. And welcome tonight, Dr. Jessica Howard and Jackie Frankie.
Thank you so much for having us, Mayor Coontz and councilors. It's a great pleasure to be here tonight. And there, perfect. Okay, thanks. Oh, you can let it go. Okay. You know, I feel like we've passed a critical test up here. So thanks again for having us. I'm privileged to be joined by Jackie Frankie, who is one of our Board of Education members at Chemeketa, and she is also playing a particularly active role in a particular initiative that we have going on, which is we have a measure on the ballot for this November, and we're here to talk a little bit about that. So I have a slideshow, and I'll just kind of walk through the slides. Chemeketa's mission is to transform lives and strengthen communities, and that is what we strive to do every day. On the slide, those are all actual students of Chemeketa, and our service district is 2,600 square miles, Marion, Polk, Yamhill, and a portion of Lynn up the counties. We are the second largest community college in the state, obviously after Portland Community College in the metro region. We serve about 18,000 students a year, and we're the state's largest Hispanic serving institution, which is a huge opportunity for us. One thing that we don't do that often is talk about ourselves, and so this is an evening that hopefully we get to do a little bit of that. But truly, Chemeketa has some extraordinary qualities, and just wanted to share a few of those with you before I go into the bond. So we're proud to be the community college of this region, and something to share about our value. We had an economic impact study performed about a little over a year ago. All 17 community colleges in the state had the same study performed, and it was found that for every dollar that students spend at Chemeketa, they get an $8.50 return, which we were incredibly excited about, but even more so when we realized that the state average for all 17 community colleges was $5.20, and that is including our number of $8.50. So obviously we pulled up that number, but I think it's a single metric of how the college has for decades managed its resources wisely and deployed them for the best effect with students. And so that's something we're proud to share. CTE, Career and Technical Education, is something that we're proud to do. And we have a lot of quality in our programs. And I simply want to mention one program because it's indicative of how we approach the programming in our kind of across the board, but it's our nursing program. If you're familiar with the way nursing works is after 2 years of training, one can sit for the national exam to become a registered nurse or an RN. And nationally, the pass rate for the RN exam is 79%. In Oregon, it's 86%. And at Chemeketa, it's 100%, has been that way for a number of years. It's just one of the things that speaks to the quality of our program. So just really proud of that and wanted to share that. If any of you have had any issues with your medical care of late, think of the delays and all sorts of things, you realize how critical it is for us to continue this kind of programming. In terms of something else that no other community college has in the state is our Chemeketa Scholars Program, which is the program that is available to high school seniors who are graduating. If they have a grade point average of 3.5 or above, and they come to Chemeketa, they pay no tuition for their full 2 years with us. No other community college in the state offers this, and for one simple reason, it's self-funded. So this is one of those benefits that one gets if one is in the district, and of course that includes Polk County. One other thing to mention that is unusual about us is that we have the only, from what we know, the only community college publishing arm located at a community college. So we have something called Chemeketa Press. It is a faculty-reviewed textbook publishing company, and it is, all of the books are oriented specifically for our students. Our faculty are the ones who author these textbooks. They are peer-reviewed, they are reviewed by students, they are beautiful, they are accessible, and they are low cost. And we've saved students over $6 million to date, and we sell those books across the nation. So something that, again, I think is, it reflects on the values we have as an institution. And finally, we were the first community college in the state to create a bachelor's degree. And this degree is our Bachelor of Applied Science in Leadership and Management. And we started that last fall. And this stacks on top of each and every 2-year career and technical education program that exists. So you don't even have to have gotten it from us. You could have gotten it from another institution. But if you are out in the workforce doing anything from automotive technology to paramedic to building inspection to there's so many options. I think we have 94 of them. Computer information systems. Any of those 2-year degrees, which have heretofore been considered terminal degrees because it gets you right out into the workforce. What we're finding is that folks are out in the workforce. They intend to climb the career ladder within their own industries, often within the jobs that they're in, but they don't have that bachelor's degree and they don't have the leadership or management training. And so this is designed specifically as a result of input we received from local employers. And it's been incredible. And it's for the working adult, so the person never stops working, not even for a second. And the program is essentially all online with one evening on site. And we're actually starting 2 more cohorts this fall, one of which is completely online. So even if one is in the very, very far, say, western reaches of our district, which would be west of Willamina, they might as well be in the middle of Salem because of their ability to access this incredible program that is truly transforming not only the future for many of our students and helping our employers, but creating an entirely different pathway and understanding for career and technical education.
I just wanted to mention that the city council members do have a copy of the brochure, the 94 programs, CTE programs, and they also have the leadership and management flyer. Yes.
Well, that's for enjoyable reading later. We couldn't have done all of the things I just mentioned and really anything else without the commitment and support of our communities. Back in 2008, we passed our last bond levy, and our board is deeply committed to not ever asking our community for more than we need and shying away completely from overlapping bonds. So the idea behind the bond levy proposal on the ballot this fall is that this is about to sunset, and the idea is that the new one would come right into place. Taxes would not rise. There would be no change vis-a-vis the Chemeketa existing bond rate, which is 27 cents per thousand. All of the images on the slide relate to programming we've been able to do because of that 2008 bond levy. and it has impacted tens of thousands of students in emergency services, in healthcare, in general education, and all across our district. So this is, right here, this slide shows the specifics of the bond measure that will be on the ballot this fall. You can see that the rate stays the same. It looks like the amount goes up. That's simply because there are more properties, and properties are worth more than they were back in 2008. So working really hard to keep that number as low as possible and not ask our voters, our residents who own property, to pay even a cent more. When we considered the fact that our one bond was sunsetting and that it might be an opportunity to think about a new one, we didn't just go forward. We asked our community what it thought and what it thought we needed. And we have held innumerable conversations across our district since 2021. We essentially came out of the pandemic and went right into the community and said, what do you need? What are we doing well? What can we do more of? Some of those conversations were here in Monmouth Independence. We also held them in Dallas. We held them in Salem, in Kaiser, in Stayton, Sublimity, McMinnville, Woodburn, and more. And we got a lot of input that told us to continue to provide cutting-edge career and technical education for sure. And so that is featured prominently in our bond measure. And you can see the other things on the slide that we also basically, we got a lot of information about the state of our facilities and about kind of future-focused workforce needs to ensure that we weren't just thinking about today, but that we were thinking about the next 15 years, because that's really what this bond would help us address, is our physical and infrastructure needs for the next 15 to 20 years. You also see on their community polling. I don't know if any of you were lucky enough to get the call last December, but there were many calls that went out. And we were very glad to see how very, very positive the community feels about Chemeketa, and just gave us a wonderful feeling about moving forward. And so we are doing that. So what exactly would this bond measure help us do? There is one of our primary foci right there, cutting edge career and technical education training, specifically for a new trade center, because we have apprentices on our Salem campus in HVAC, sheet metal, electrical, and plumbing. And right now they are on top of each other. And these are folks who work in companies that are in Polk, Yamhill, and Marion counties. And then also we need to double capacity for paramedic programming, because the need for paramedics, specifically dual language paramedics, English and Spanish, is incredibly high. And anyone will tell you that. So we need to do that, and that means changing the facilities. Wellness and disaster preparedness. This is a specific project on the Salem campus regarding basically allowing this structure to continue to function as a resource during huge environmental crises. This was, in fact, served as incident command for the Beachy Creek fire, and that in a building that has no air conditioning. So what we want to do is make it something that can continue to play this role. And we also were able to leverage an $8 million. I knew I was going to forget that. I forgot this last time I said it. But we've already secured an $8 million bond from the state that we did not have to ask any of our residents to pay for. We just need a one-to-one match in order to utilize it. And so we're hoping this GEO bond will provide that match. So it's an additional $8 million. I know. Thank you, Jackie. She keeps me on my toes. Improved teaching and learning spaces. This relates to every single location we have, including the Polk Center in Dallas, which is in dire need of new technology. So, when people say, well, what is this really about? I like to say, well, imagine the phone you used 15 years ago. Are you still using it? Well, that's how fast and how crucial technology is, and each iteration is quite different from the last. So this has a lot to do with what it means to upgrade all of our teaching and learning facilities. And of course, we have ADA requirements and other things that continue to evolve that we have to address. Safety and security. This is something, again, that relates to every single one of our locations: parking lots, HVAC, elevators, and our security cameras, which again, we have every possible iteration of generations of cameras. We've got to to ensure that our students feel safe and are safe. And this is a big part of that. Science opportunities. This is a kind of narrow, a specific piece, but what we've realized is that the Woodburn Center has a lot of students there who are getting the 2-year associate's degree and then transferring, but they are not able to take their required sophomore science lab because we don't have a lab there. So this is a huge access issue for that community. And then finally, supportive environments for students. This again relates to each and every location that we've got, including the Polk Center and also, all of them. Because if students aren't able to get the supports that they need, then they're not successful. And it doesn't matter how glamorous the programs are if students aren't succeeding in them. And we're certainly seeing those needs go up post-pandemic with the young people in our community. And so those are the categories of projects. We're very happy to take any questions if you have any.
Counselor Salinas Olivero.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm very proud to be part of the Chemeketa community as an employee there. I believe Chemeketa is always very thoughtful about centering everything around students. So this levy is not taken lightly, and so I really appreciate you being here. These programs are so beneficial, not just like the Bachelor of Applied Science. I have immigrant students and those who have experience in their country. They're doctors, they're lawyers, they have MBAs in their country, and this helps for them not to have to start over. And so I think that is a huge deal for some of the population of our students. And so this levy, you're going around and getting information, so and hopefully it does pass. A lot of these improvements are needed. Have you thought about a plan B, just in case? I guess that's...
The one thing we do know, and Jessica can speak more about this, but some of the things on that list have to be done. The ADA accessibility issues, I mean, there are several things that have to be done. They will be done so that we stay in compliance everywhere, but it will mean cuts to other programs. There are no extra funds to do them. The $8 million grant from the state that we already have would be lost. So if we could make money, we would, and use it for the things that we have to do, but it's not there. And I must say, I'm very proud to be on the board of Chemeketa and really proud to work with Jessica and the executive team that have really paid attention to the community. And they've come to us and say, this isn't just what we want to do at the college, this is what the community wants us to do. When companies came and said we need a diesel mechanic program, it took us several years because of all of the approvals, but we got a diesel mechanic program because the community wanted it. 2-year program. At the end of the first year, every single one of those students had a full-time job waiting for them. And in some cases, the employer was paying their tuition the second year. But that's how, as I say, I'm just so very proud that we just don't sit there and do what we want to do. We continue to ask the community, what do you want us to do? What do you need in your business? What do what do the schools need to get them to come to Chemeketa? So we're doing everything that we can to increase enrollment, to make students successful, to make sure that they leave with a certificate, a degree, or move on to a 4-year. And we need this to continue to do that at the current needs of the community.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that explanation. And I would encourage you to even put that in your presentation. I think it's important to hear of the things you have to do and how you're going to have to make that happen. I think that's really important. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Counselor McKeel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you can see, we struggle with these buttons as well. So, I really want to thank you for including the amount of money, the return on investment. that comes from the public spending $1 towards the community college. There's all kinds of data. So my background is in education. I graduated Oregon State, but the real economic driver in a community is the community college. So I think it's a huge investment for our community to have Chemeketa doing as good a job as it can. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
Counselor Carey.
Talk a little bit about your enrollment trends. Are your enrollments going up? Are they flat, declining? How'd you come out of COVID?
Well, all of the community colleges really in the nation, right, across the nation, took a massive hit when COVID came, in part because we serve the most vulnerable members of the community. So that's sort of an obvious answer. In Oregon, it was particularly hard. And we've tried to figure out why. And I think one of the theories I've heard is that that there is a volatility because of how much we penetrate into the community. So we have tremendous, like you would have trouble in a room full of folks in our district not finding someone who'd been to Chemeketa. That may not be the case in other communities in other states. So we have a tremendous touch and reach. And so that means when something happens, the numbers move, they jump quickly. So all that to say, Oregon took a massive hit. And Chemeketa was no exception. We were essentially tracking with the average of the state. Since then, we have steadily been climbing up. And so that's exactly what's happening. We're about 3% constantly over the year before every term. So we are coming out of it. I think, so much of community college enrollment is dependent upon that counter-cyclical tendency with the economy. So with the economy, if McDonald's pays $17,000 and a $10,000 signing bonus, it's much harder to entice the student who maybe is just coming out of high school. And so we see that. Now, what's going to happen in a few years is that everything that can be automated will be. And those folks will have to get retrained. In fact, I think all of us will have to get retrained because of this rate of technological change. So community colleges we're almost taking a big breath to become more and more poised to pick up where, to track the rate of change. Because if we don't do that, then employers aren't going to get the folks in the jobs who know how to use the technology. For instance, we're hearing people who would typically, or companies that would typically hire, for instance, an English major in the past to do writing. Now they want that person to be able to use all the AI tools as well as write. Well, that's a whole different ballgame. And if we're not on our toes and up to date, then our industries aren't able to be the same. So it's a complicated, I think, question. We're coming back, but it's not just that we're coming back. We are trying to really think strategically about a future that's changing dramatically. And that's exactly why this bond the concepts are there, but there's a flexibility to them because the amount of change we've had even in the last 5 years, who could have predicted that? So we need spaces that can function in many, many different ways, and that's part of what the bond's about.
Community colleges have always had the advantage of being nimble and being reactive to community needs, as you've talked about. And I think if you were to, ask anyone in education anywhere, they would all agree that the CTE education is pretty vital because there's a lot of kids that is their first and best choice. That said, you also have the transfer program, which provides, I assume, I've not looked lately, but an affordable 2-year option for those on the way to, the more traditional 4-year degree. So it's a difficult portfolio that you have, but I think you're able to articulate that in a way that serves all needs, hopefully. So the degree to which that comes across, it came across fairly well tonight. I think it's going to be an important selling point for you. So thank you for your information and time.
Thank you.
Seeing no other comments, thank you so much, both of you, especially coming over tonight. I know the travel from Salem was difficult this evening, and so thank you, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Really appreciate the
this
opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, and that brings us to our business agenda. So we'll let them log out, and then we will have our transportation commissioners join us to report on the activities of the newly reformed named transportation, our first report from the actual Transportation Commission. Here we go, because that's not what they were before. Very cool. So we'll have you come on up, introduce yourselves, and turn on the mic when you speak, and speak into the mic. Thank you.
You go, I go. Okay. Good evening, commissioners and guests. My name is Linda Bersani, and I don't have much voice tonight, so I'm going to keep it short, but you'll like that anyway. You have a long agenda. I'm somehow the new chair of the Transportation Commission. Thank you so much. And I am in my third year of serving on the commission. I volunteered to sit on the commission, hoping to provide a voice for bike and pedestrian safety specifically. And I'm learning a lot about other kinds of transportation safety and appreciate that. I hope to aid in the educational and policy development aimed at this increasing the bike and pedestrian safety. With the support of other commission members, I've been personally involved in bringing a bike rodeo to Monmouth recently. And we have done that the past 2 summers, thanks to the Parks and Recreation Board grant and collaboration with community businesses, state agencies through ODOT, who have a fleet of bicycles. Some of you may not know this, but they have a grantee. Their grantee from ODOT is Cycle Oregon. They have a special program of being able to allocate fleets of bicycles to schools and training. So long-term goal, really, in my heart and with the ODOT program, is to have bike safety embedded, bike and pedestrian safety embedded into the PE curriculum of the public schools at the elementary level. So I've been working, our first year, 2023 summer, we did a community bike rodeo in the park, Monmouth City Park. It was great, but it was voluntary participation from families who were willing and able to get the information, sign their kiddos up, bring them to the park on a Friday. That obviously meant we missed a lot of families, a lot of kids. But it was wonderful, it was successful, 22 children and very happy families that showed up. But this year, thanks to all kinds of support from all kinds of places, Monmouth Elementary School said, yeah, we'd like to host it at the school. So we had all the 5th graders at Monmouth Elementary School participate this year. So from 22 children getting really good information and brand new helmets fitted and learning the bike safety skills, how to check their bikes and all of that. This year we had 85 children. Hoping to do it again next year and triple that number. And so we're just very fortunate to be in Monmouth, the city of Monmouth, I believe, to be able to have a small enough and invested enough school district to think about doing this district-wide at some point at those intermediate grades in our 3 elementary schools. So that's my long-term goal. And I will stop talking and let first, I really not to tell about the other commission members. One of the biggest things we did this year, as Mayor Kuntz has already mentioned, is make that transition from the Traffic Safety Commission to the Monmouth Transportation Commission. That took us from 2 or 3. We had 3 citizen representatives, and we went up from 3 to 5 this year. So we've added 2 new wonderful citizen volunteer members. Sean is one of them, and he's going to talk in a minute. Sean Robbins. Sean is not a new person, though. He's been around as long as a couple of years. John Love is new, and Kyle Jansen. And Kyle Jansen will be my vice chair with the commission. And we still got wonderful staff support from Russ Cooper and Chief Haynes, and our council liaison, John Oberst, who attends every single meeting and came to the bike rodeo and cheered with the parents. So we really appreciate council support and the Parks and Rec grant money that allowed us to do this. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Sean Robbins. I guess also been on the commission for 3 years. I am just a citizen member. I'm also a truck driver, I guess by trade. So I just kind of see a lot of things throughout Oregon and Washington and just a little bit of California. Just the way that I do distribute building materials. So I go to a lot of small towns with a pretty big truck. So I get to see kind of a lot of the ways that they, kind of route truck traffic and other traffic. And I figured it'd be kind of fun to join the Traffic Safety Commission just to, have a word in that. And then it's been kind of growing. So it's just kind of cool to be able to have some input, about different ways to do things. And some of the stuff we've done over the past year, just briefly, a couple major things was, adding the rapid flashing beacons to 99 in Madrona with the pedestrian refuge island, which seems to be, fairly helpful in getting those inbound cars to slow down when they see somebody trying to cross, and also lets the pedestrians be a little bit more seen for the people who are going out of town as well. That's a pretty major thing. And then we've also been focusing on speeding on Clay Street again. That's kind of been, a major issue. That the speed is 20 on that road, but just the way it's pretty wide, and a lot of people seem to carry quite a bit of speed through there. So we've done different studies and stuff to try to come up with different ways to kind of maybe neck that down a little bit and slow people down. So that's an ongoing thing we've been working on. And then just a couple other items that we've done is just trying to, as part of the Safe Routes to School program, maybe do some refreshing of the yellow no parking curbs and different, verbiage and curb markings around the elementary school, just to try to keep the parent traffic flow a little bit more easy for everybody dropping their kids off. And yeah, those are, just some other little things, different stuff that people have came to us for, just about different intersections and stuff. Those were pretty much the main points that I could remember from the past year that we've been doing. So I guess with that, is there any questions for us on the Transportation Commission? I got to remember that we kind of stepped it up a little bit.
Councilor Selena Silver.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say that everything that you've done, no matter how big or small it might seem to you, is noticeable. And people do notice the difference, and it makes a huge difference in walkability and riding your bikes and just feeling more safe on the road. So really appreciate your work on that.
Thank you. Councilor McHugh.
And I'd just like to thank you for anything that you did for the 99 in Madrona flashing light. I feel like I am alive today because now there's a flashing light, because I would kind of inch my bike out there. And so thank you. It's amazing to have that.
The Public Works Department and Russ also is a big part of that.
I'll see Councilor Belts and then Councilor Lopez.
Thank you again for the work. Yeah, I watched it for the last 3 years, growing from year 22 to your 85 to hopefully 3 times that number. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Sort of 2 parts. What do you have planned for the future for the next year, and what can we do to help facilitate that as council? That might be mine.
Sounds like
Thank you for your comments and your question, Roxanne. I'm going to Corvallis School District this month is actually going to be piloting having the bike what they call it, the fleet of bikes coming into 3 schools in Corvallis in September. And they've been working with their PE teachers to help them feel that they can take ownership, that they can add some flexibility to the curriculum. There is a curriculum that's part of what they call the Jump Start program that comes, it's actually out of the National Transportation Safety Commission or Board, I believe, and it's been filtered down and added to by agencies that are bike advocacy groups in Oregon. But then to get it to the local level and to have a teacher take something on is another part of the process that has to happen. So I'm going to talk to, having been a school district administrator myself in the past and a teacher, I want to see how the dynamics are there, how that's working, what those PE teachers think they're going to need. And that, I mean, that goes beyond obviously the Monmouth Transportation Commission work, but because we've gotten very good at collaborating in this town and this community, I know that that's being supported by both the district and the city, that we would work with the schools. If we can get to 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, that seems to be a critical time to get this education into the school. So that's one step, is to go observe. And Dallas also is talking about doing some bike safety education in different ways. So I'm trying to get contact over there too. Right now we have a champion at MES. He's helping talk to a couple other people, thanks to Russ and his contacts with Safe Routes to Schools activity. We know Jason Clark at the school district office is the student safety coordinator for the district, and I keep him abreast of what we're doing. So just kind of trying to keep connected with folks, and hope that answers your question.
That's fantastic. I'm so excited to hear that.
Thank you.
Well, Counselor Belts beat me to the question there. So I'll just use my time to really thank you for the work that you've done, both in the initiatives that you've shared, as well as, the refocusing and the growing of the commission. And I'm really thankful for that. Thankful for all the fantastic work, and enthused to see the future progress and where you help to lead this city.
Thank you. Thank you all.
And Counselor I'm going to give Counselor Obers and then Counselor Perry.
I just wanted to say that this group is just fun to work with. We do a lot of the kind of routine stuff when something, a complaint comes in from a resident but behind that, we've got this driving force, and the new chair of our group, who is very focused on bicycle and pedestrian issues, and I think everybody is on board with that, and I see good things moving forward from that. I would also mention that our next meeting is the 23rd of this month at 7 p.m. at the police station. So, just wanted to throw that one in there.
Couple questions. Sean, you mentioned cleaning up some of the, and refreshing some of the no parking strips around the elementary schools. Are we done with those
No,
for this year?
I'm not sure if I'm
Yeah, I mean, I'm
assuming.
part of this is for Russ, but. Okay, so.
And I'm going to have someone repeat that into the mic so that.
But Mr. Cooper said that the no parking zones around MES will be tackled as part of the Safe Routes to School program work that will be done in that area, starting soon.
And what is the timeline on that, now that school's in session?
Contractor is under contract. We had a pre-construction meeting just this past week. They'll mobilize in and begin construction during, basically this next month. And then the project itself will go through the first of the year. And I will add, there's plans for lots of coordination with the school district through that process and communication with parents.
You know, one of the things that I noticed, and I was down at MES today, looking at some of the pedestrian routes, the sidewalks, we've got a lot of vegetation that's encroaching on the sidewalks and narrowing narrowing that walking path. I don't know what we do about that, but it's just something I think we need to be conscious of. Property owners have their vegetation that I'm sure, trim nicely on the inside that they can see, but don't pay much attention to the outside, the sidewalk side. And so consequently, especially you get a big car parked there, those little kids got to go single file through some of that. So,
Yeah,
just not a complaint, just a FYI.
very good.
All right, seeing no other questions, thank you very much, both of you, for taking your evening, and really appreciate your work and volunteering to help us do all the things. So thank you very much. Thanks, Sean. Great to meet you. And with that, our next order of business is review of an OLCC application. I see Sergeant Strack in the back, so we're going to bring him forward to give our staff report.
Madam Mayor, City Councilors, I'm Sergeant Mike Strack. And what I have for you today is a liquor license application for Dry Town Tap Station. As you know, it's already an established business and it's operating under an approved liquor license already, but the purpose of this is because it's a change of ownership. So they have to apply for a new license because they are starting a new business. My job was to go through and do a background check, which was fairly easy for me since the business has been running for a few years now, and there's been no major complaints from the business on our end. And also the two new owners already work in a liquor control aspect. They are the owner and operator of Ankeny Vineyards. So when I talk to them, it doesn't look like there's going to be any proposed major changes to the business. And there's no proposed changes to what the liquor license was already approved for. So with that being said, the staff suggestion would be to move in favor of approving the liquor license. And if you have any questions, feel free.
I would go ahead and like to make a motion. I move to send OLCC a recommendation in favor of approving a liquor license for Dry Town Tap Station.
Second that.
Thank you, Councilor Salinas Oliveros for the motion and Councilor Lopez Oberst for the second. Any lopers? Any additional questions for the sergeant? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And
Aye.
seeing no opposition, please go ahead and get that off to LCC, and we'll welcome our new owners to town. Thank you
Awesome.
very much.
Thank you, guys.
Sergeant Strack. And we get a twofer tonight, another one of our fabulous and active commissions this evening. I would like to invite to the table our staff support and not chair, well, you're not the chair, the vice chair of our wonderful Arts and Culture Commission.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and councilors. We're here tonight to have you approve our Arts and Culture Handbook, which the Arts and Culture Commission has worked very hard on tailoring it to our needs. It was a handbook from Golden, Colorado, that we had asked permission from them to be able to use it for our purposes. And there was a lot of work put into creating it so it would fit our needs. That's basically it. If there's any questions, that's why I have Melody here to answer them.
Go ahead, Councilor Salinas Oliveros.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say that this was really important work, and we're very fortunate to have experience on this Arts and Culture Commission who know how important it is to really protect artists, protect the city, to have guidelines and answers to questions that I think come up that we don't think about. And the work was large. It was a heavy lift, but we couldn't have done it without the experts on the Arts and Culture Commission. So really appreciate that work, and I think this is going to benefit our community, and it's going to help our city in so many different ways, and it's going to protect our community and our artists and our city because we'll have a guideline, and I think we'll be an example to other cities of how to run an Arts and Culture Commission. So thank you so much for your work, and I'd like to make a motion unless someone else has a.
I had a couple
Okay.
questions, and perhaps others did as well. So I'm just going to go ahead. One small thing that stood out to me. I am looking at our packet, page 6. I assume no, that's also page 6 of the handbook. I think it's page 19 of our packet. So on page 6, under budget considerations, under 3C. It mentions the MACC reserve account, and I'm not familiar with any of our general fund accounting for which we sort of hold money in reserve for boards and commissions. We have some annual allocations, but I didn't understand what MACC reserve account was.
That's really a typo. And we went through, like Phyllis had said, the Golden account, they have a reserve account. We had tried to make sure that we'd pulled all of those out because we do not have a reserve account at this point in time. So yes, and any and all typos, any and all of those kind of mistakes, please point them out.
Counselor Lopez?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you very much for putting this together. It's a fantastic read, and I love the focus and direction that it gives the committee. A couple questions. So I guess it's page 1 of 18 of the handbook, page 14 of our. No, I'm sorry, page. I don't know. A lot of page numbers.
Yep.
14, yes, page 14 of our packet. It lists the first point of the mission to encourage opportunities for recognition of art and culture in the city of Monmouth. I think that's an absolutely fantastic first point. However, when I read further, it tends to focus very, very finely on public art. And when I think of public art, going into the definitions of public art, it talks about things that are inside or outside of public buildings and public right-of-ways. I don't see any mentions of publicly accessible art that might be on private property, or any mentions of collaborations with the nonprofit community. Thinking about like Apple Box Theater, I'm thinking about educational community, both at the university and elementary level. I guess those would be public buildings. But I'm just wondering if publicly accessible art on private property has any space here in terms of forwarding that first point of the mission.
Those first 7 points
Mm-hmm.
are pulled exactly verbatim from our ordinance. So that wasn't a reimagination on our part as far as that goes. And if you go back into, it would be your page 16, page 3 of the handbook, where we start defining arts and culture, it does give a huge list, which is also partially defined in the Monmouth ordinance as well. We do say on your page 17, page 4 of 18 in the handbook, it does address public art as defined by this policy that is owned by the city, donated or loaned, sited on private property, and owned by the city according to legal agreement. privately sponsored artwork that is cited on publicly owned land according to a legal agreement between the city. So it doesn't surprise me that you might not have seen that because this is a lot of words. And to let you know, I mean, the City of Golden handbook was probably about another, additional 10 pages. Addressing those kind of issues is really important.
Yeah.
We wanted to make this document something that is a living document and that besides some tiny revisions throughout the years, this is going to be able to continue. Golden's was not the only handbook that we looked at. We looked at Medford, Salem, Portland, Georgia, and basically went through and said, okay, all of them are saying all of these things. How do we want to make it fit for us where we might not have those art in public places at this point in time? But again, looking 10 years down the road, what if we do? Or what if someone comes to us with this? Are we actually addressing that? Does that make sense?
It does, and I think I did note some of those segments, but those dealt with, or at least the way that I understood it, maybe my understanding was off, dealt with, publicly owned art that was being hung in a private space, or privately owned art that was being hung in a public space, essentially. But I guess I'm thinking about like, what about a nonprofit that's not publicly funded, but a nonprofit that opens a gallery here? Do you have any interaction with them? Is there any crossover, right?
If someone opens a gallery here, that would be their own business as far as that goes. Our charge for the Monmouth Arts and Culture Commission is basically how do we network with our own entities and bring art in?
Mm-hmm.
How could we network with other viable 503Cs, or as the city put a sculpture, in our beautiful area out there? The art that the city owns, how are we caring for that? How are we maintaining that? Where are we storing it? All of our public art technically has to be out where the public can see it. And if not, it needs to be noted as such so that if the artist wants to come and says, you guys bought my work 5 years ago, where is it? I can't find it anywhere. We're the gatekeepers for that. So it's not as much about us being the ones putting on events, but partnering with those that want to put on events, if that makes sense.
So within this, if I was a private gallery owner, and I wanted to collaborate with the Arts and Culture Commission to put on an event, that would be permissible.
To put on a what?
To put on an event, that would
Oh,
be
absolutely.
permissible.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
That would be fantastic.
And actually, mentioning that section 2B, I just noticed something else. It mentions public art definition, artwork donated or loaned specifically to the MACC. And I guess it's not donated to the commission, donated to the city.
To the city.
So that's
Yeah.
another potential typo. And I don't mean to pick over this because the
No,
whole
this is fantastic.
giant thing is
Yeah.
wonderful. I mean, really appreciate not just all the work that went into it, because I know what the heck you've been doing on it, but the thought of having it, right, creating this for us, because we are making more of an emphasis on this. And we really need to retain more of Lane's services to come up with all the agreements that are mentioned in here. I call this the Lane Shirley keep him out of retirement policy. But that's great. And the only other one I kind of wanted to maybe think through a little bit, there's a section 4G5 conflict of interest. And it's under the juries, I think, talking about members of the commission, the staff, liaisons, juries and things. And I just, it mirrors somewhat, but obviously if we have staff or elected officials and There are state ethics considerations also involved in this.
I would see this as being in addition to, I mean, it's clearly the state law applies. This really addresses, I think, different types of conflict of interest, and would be in addition to what state law would require in terms of conflict of interest that is denominated by a pecuniary gain or loss.
Which is, yeah, what this is. Okay, thanks.
So
I just wanted
you'd
to
read these together.
get a little bit of a view
It
on
works.
that, if we needed to reference that at all. For that subset, it wouldn't affect commissioners, but would some of the other folks. Yes, Councilor Opers.
It could affect commissioners if a commission member happens to have a daughter who's an arts student at Western. And in fact, my wife stayed out of that selection process that year for that very reason. What I really wanted to turn back to was that the very beginning where we have the arts and culture mission. And I got to say, this group has taken this seriously. We have had arts commissions in the past who have known their charge, but they haven't really been charged with doing the things that the ordinance says they should be doing. And this group has said, wait a minute. And this addition to the commission, fabulous, because it does finally spell out how we're supposed to handle all the art we've obtained over the last few years. And, laid out exactly how this commission is supposed to interact with the arts that the city is involved with. And I just want to say appreciation, not just for this document, but with the overall effort of taking this ordinance and really starting to apply what was enacted 20 years ago or something. So I appreciate that.
And if I may make another comment, pulling off of the city plan and the goals for the city, there are two different areas, one in community engagement and one in city facilities, where even in the city goals, on the community engagement 1.5, plan inclusive and cultural specific events to best represent the community. And that's what our goal is. That's what we were charged with in our ordinance. And then the city's facilities, 6.4, develop a plan for acquiring public art at City Hall. And so that allows us to address this as well. And just one side note related to that, we don't have a lot of space at City Hall. And so really paying attention to the fact that we have to have proper storage areas, we have to have proper tracking, we have to have it out in public view. What makes sense for the city versus what we like to do and put it up everywhere.
Thanks, Melanie. Yes, Councilor Carey, and then Councilor Sleazy.
I have several, and I hope they'll be fairly quick. Thank you for professionalizing this. I think you've done a really nice job of capturing all that seems to have been needed for some time. That said, as complicated as it is, will this make it difficult? I mean, you guys understand this perfectly. In 10 years, is somebody going to be able to apply the intricacies of this? And will it slow you down in decision making?
No, I don't believe it will slow us down in decision making. It actually streamlines decision making.
Yeah.
Previously, we didn't have a specific plan, and we're operating on a virtually non-existent budget, and art's expensive. So, streamlining and looking again at what do we have for space, where can we put art? If it's got to be up, then does it make sense for us to purchase art? Looking at all those different things. And these, like I say, these are, I almost want to say boilerplates. This is basically a carbon copy of Portland's as well. These are common plans in cities, small to large, around the country. So they are consistent, but they also evolve for each community's needs and requirements.
one of the things, you know, in the definition of the arts and culture, you talk about the different elements of culture in particular. I don't have a specific reference here, but we spend most of the time in the document on the physical art, very little on the performance art. And that is a rich and deep element for us. And so that seems to be missing, I guess, for me. I'm sure you vetted it, but it seems to be missing. And then sort of maybe to dovetail a little bit onto that, I was surprised and disappointed that there was no real inclusion of Western Oregon University. They provide and have the ability to provide a lot of art and a lot of culture. I mean, their percent for art projects, you know, on campus are numerous, and beauty in the eye of the beholder, I understand, but I mean, I guess, and Central High School provides music and drama, you know, choral and instrumental music that could add to the richness and vibrance of the arts and culture community here. So.
And the handbook's a policy manual, so I'm not.
I know.
It's not, I mean, this obviously doesn't address they have a 5-year plan, and it does mention partners, and it mentions all of the other aspects of art.
Yeah.
So I think this really focuses just on the policies of how we handle and care for what's considered the public art, which performing arts is wonderful, but you don't de-accession performing arts. So.
I understand, and I haven't read the charge of arts and culture recently.
They have a strategic plan as well, which is awesome, which mentions a lot of the stuff. So.
Yeah, well, but again, I'm not looking, you know, in the right places apparently. One of the things that I wondered about, and the last one for me, 2D, I don't know, page 4 of 18, I guess it is. You talk about things that are not considered public art, and which I've been working all day to try to figure out how, you know, why I should be worried about that. But you make a number of instances where you reference unless it is designed by an artist, part of a specific project or part of the artist's deal, but there's no definition of artist. You got definitions of everything else, but not of an artist. And so I'm wondering if a person who metal fabricates bicycle racks in different shapes and configurations would be considered an artist.
Absolutely. Yeah. An artist would be anyone who is creating the XYZ definition of art. So would a metal artist be an artist? Absolutely.
I think the one bullet point there, what they're trying to pull out obviously is if we put in a park bench that we just bought from Park Bench Company, catalog.com, we don't have to de-accession it. We don't have to have an agreement with that company on how we're going to maintain that bench. So this is really talking about procuring something from an individual, most likely, who has created a piece that we are specifically acquiring, rather than sort of those standard elements. And I think that's great, because then we're not freaking out about, even though it's a cool looking bench and it might be considered an artistic bench, it wasn't an artist's creation, and we are not entering into a contract to receive it and care for it as public. So I can read that in there without changing that language, I think.
Okay.
And just to touch back for a moment on your other points around the dance and the music and whatnot, the point of our commission is to facilitate those kind of relationships with other entities. We have so many individuals on our board who have relationships with WU, whether they were current students, past students, current employees, past employees. We have such a tight relationship and have purchased art from Western for years. So our goal is to network with those entities that do that kind of performance art and maybe have those kind of relationships in that way. But yeah, we would not be purchasing a dance production. We would not be purchasing those kind of things. So that is why the handbook addresses the physicality of that kind of purchased public art.
Yeah, and it does a great job of that. It really does. We as a council, since I can recall, have been looking to find ways to enhance our relationship with the university, to foster a relationship with the university. We have different, in many ways, missions, and we have different objectives, and we have different needs, certainly. But this is an easy one. This is fun. This is great. We can cross promote. The Arts and Culture Committee can promote the Smith Fine Arts.
Exactly.
Smith Fine Arts can focus on the individual galleries. So, to me, it's just an opportunity missed. It's not a deal killer by any means, but we've been trying to do this for as long as I can remember, and every time we turn around, we get right up to it and we don't do it.
Yeah, we got it in other places, just not in.
Yeah.
Counselor Selena Solberg.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And just really quickly, we do have commissioners who, one was a past dance instructor at Western, and Melody, I believe, past employee at Western as well. So there are some deep connections to Western on our commission, and that's always kept in the forefront. So thank you for bringing that up, Counselor Carey. And I would now like to move to approve the Monmouth Arts and Culture Commission's handbook.
I'll second.
Yes.
That should probably include a conceptual amendment to Section 3C, where they acknowledge the budget reserve, or the reserve account was in error. Don't need to wordsmith it, but I think just a conceptual amendment to correct that. And you had one other, was it?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. And if you could include those as conceptual
was
amendments, then I think, then we wouldn't need to bring it back.
So including all the additional
Some
edited
edits to 2B
to-
and 3C were the
okay,
ones
to
I
2B and 3C in the handbook.
That's good.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
And do you,
Wait a second, there it goes. I will second that as well.
thank you. Any additional questions or comments? All in favor of approving the handbook with these slight changes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And seeing none opposed, it's official. Thank you. Woo-hoo!
I have to add that this commission did an excellent job, and I really wasn't involved in all the work that they did. So I let them just do their thing.
Good. Now we will ask other staff to have their boards and commissions create handbooks or something maybe now, they've set the bar pretty high. So, thank you, Susan. Thank you so much, Melody. We really appreciate that work. All right. And now we mentioned briefly at our last meeting a potential change to ordinance regarding the sale of electricity, which we didn't ever think we'd do until we need to do that. So Director Wade Carey of Monmouth Power and Light.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Members of council, so back on August 20th, I presented a staff report about a proposed ordinance amendment that would allow the city to resell electricity supplied by the city with a markup, but only for the purposes of EV charging stations, commercially owned and operated EV charging stations. So not much has changed. Nothing has changed since then. And just back with a recommendation to conduct the first reading of ordinance 1415.
All right, since last meeting, did anyone find anything they want to mention or any tweaks to this? Otherwise, I will consider this the first reading of ordinance 1415, an ordinance amending city code section 13.05.040 relating to the resale of electricity for electrical vehicle charging. And we'll be back at our next meeting for a second reading and adoption.
Thank you very much.
So, can we go back to arts and culture? Because now we have to talk about development codes and planning commission.
Everybody loves a good color.
Well, you don't need to talk very much about it. You just need to vote yes, and you can talk about it when it comes back.
Starting the conversation.
And Suzanne, before you settle in too much, I've had a request to take a 5-minute break. And our clock, still can't see over there. What time is it? 7:45. 7:46. We'll reconvene at 7:51. We will return to broadcasting. Because right now, there we go. Thank you, everyone, for that brief break. And we will now have Suzanne Duffner, Director of Community Planning and Economic Development.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, members of the City Council. I am here tonight to present the staff report to initiate Legislative Amendment 24-01. This is to consider amendments to our city code that would specifically address some of our land use review procedures. So by way of background information, the state legislature recently adopted Senate Bill 1537. Within that bill, it was primarily about new housing provisions, but it did include some language that spoke to cities' zoning and development ordinances and the need for certain land use procedures to follow a more streamlined review methodology. So we refer to these as limited land use decisions. They're kind of this class of land use applications that meet certain criteria. So these limited land use decisions, and it specifically names certain types of applications. So our tentative subdivisions, partitions, non-conforming uses, lot line adjustments, and design review have to follow a specific process, and that does not include holding a public hearing at the Planning Commission level. So upon review of our own local ordinance, we found that we were out of compliance for our major tentative partitions and subdivision reviews, and our design review currently all have to go to Planning Commission first for a public hearing and a decision. So we'll be out of compliance with that. The bill goes into effect January 1st, 2025. So we're kind of working up against that as the deadline of trying to get our code consistent with these new provisions. The decision to initiate a code amendment to the Monmouth Municipal Code, we classified as a type 4 legislative action. And so only the Planning Commission and Council have the authority to initiate changes to our code. So hence the staff report that's before you tonight to initiate this decision. There's a specific process that we have to follow to amend our code. So typically we'll hold work sessions with both the Planning Commission and the Council when we have a set of draft code amendment rules for you to review and comment on. Incorporate those changes, then we'll do our public hearings process, which would be a Planning Commission public hearing, and they make a recommendation to you, and then the council makes the final decision after also holding a public hearing. So you do not have to make specific decisions tonight on those. You don't even have specific proposed amendments before you tonight. We're really just staff is asking you to initiate the code amendment, and that will start us on that path of going through the work sessions, doing public notice, doing public meetings, and then coming before you for a final decision. So yeah, I don't think I had any other further items to comment on at this point. It's pretty straightforward, but it does get into a couple different sections of our code. So we're doing a real thorough review and making sure wherever our code talks about land use review procedures, like in Title 17 for the subdivision ordinance and Title 18 for the zoning, that we catch all of those and don't create new inconsistencies in our code as well. So that's all I had. You have any questions of me?
I love that we have to go through an entire Planning Commission and Council process, hold public hearings to change the code, to take all of those steps out of the code. I love this. Thank you, legislature, and thank you for this an additional abrogation of home rule. So, Councilor Obert.
So as I understand it, the state is telling us we have to make a change to our code. So we have to do this to tell you to go to planning to bring it back around, right? So there's really not a whole lot of wiggle room here.
Yeah, I mean, you always have the alternative not to initiate the legislative amendment.
And leave us in violation of state law.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
I mean, we're still bound by it, so we're just trying to
and
keep
then the
ourselves out
planner
of hot water.
said, ignore the legislature. So I would move to initiate legislative amendment 24-01 to consider amendments to the Monmouth Municipal Code needed to comply with limited land use review procedures found in Senate Bill 1537 537.
Second.
I will third it.
Thank you, Counselor Oberst for the motion and Counselor Lopez for the second. Again, as we go through this, I know we have very little discretion as you look at each of these steps. Do we have any discretion in how we apply Senate
Yeah,
Bill?
there are a couple of, just a couple of small areas where there's some local policy control over that. For example, will get to decide who the final appeal authority is. So even though, as I stated, you cannot hold a public hearing for that initial decision, those call them type 2 decisions in our code can be appealed to planning commission or the council, and then you can hold your public hearing. So there's a decision point there on the appeal, say, for example, of a tentative subdivision. Do you want that to come straight up to council, or do you want that to go to planning commission? Who's going to be that final decision maker for the city? And you still have to get that within the 120-day rule clock. So there may be a reason for bringing some of those up to the council, but that's a policy choice. And then the other one will be the noticing. There's a little bit of discretion in there. I think I'm talking with Lane initially about these code amendments on how you set the notice before the decision's made and how far out you go in terms of notifying people. So yeah, there's a little bit of discretion on this.
And if I can add, yeah, the state doesn't actually require even an appeal from an initial staff decision. It allows it. And so you are actually, and at least under the proposed amendments, you would be allowing an appeal from that initial staff decision either to the planning commission or the council, and the staff has made the decision to send some to planning commission, some to city council. I think the idea is let's not take everything away from the planning commission that they have to do. But in either case, that one hearing that you have on the appeal from the staff decision will be the only hearing. Because within the 120 days, we just don't have time for a staff decision, notice of that, staff decision, time for appeal to planning commission, and then another appeal to the council. Just don't have time. So staff has basically identified some appeals will go to the planning commission, which will be the final review. And if there's an appeal beyond that, it would be to LUBA. And some will go to the city council. And I think that Suzanne can tell you what you probably consider to be the more policy-driven or important decisions like subdivisions, your minor partitions, planning commission, those kinds of things. But that's how there's you've got discretion there, but that's how staff is proposing it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not.
And I would say this is not a new statute. It has been on the books. It has been honored in the breach, I think, by a lot of cities, and the state just has not enforced it. And I think most cities really have preferred the process that we have used here with a planning commission decision appealable to another. But finally, the state says, no, we want everybody to get in line. And it is all part of the housing strategy to make sure that these things move faster. So we have not been the only city that has been doing this. I would say probably the majority have. But now the state has said, no, we really mean it. We want you to get your code in line with these requirements. And that's what we have to do now.
I'm not even sure we want to be the ones to decide do we want her to prepare a draft that shows us doing all the subdivision reviews? No.
This would be reviews, only appeals from the staff decision. So it wouldn't be every subdivision.
Correct. Yeah, just appeal.
If the staff makes a decision, it's not appealed, then it's a final decision with no hearing.
Do we even? I don't know. We'll see when we have a proposed draft how we do.
Right.
Planning commission will review it, then we'll let them change any potential recommendations to come to us because we have lots of hearings on the rule. Oh. All right. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, we have a motion. That motion to initiate the legislative amendment. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And hearing no opposed, go forth and get going on it. Because, All right, and our next item of business regarding priorities to submit to the League of Oregon Cities for their legislative agenda for the coming legislature. And City Manager Rochelle Roden.
Hello. On the dais, you should have a spreadsheet that I created that has, oh, sorry. Yeah, so I'm sorry about that. On the dais, I prepared a spreadsheet for the council. This included the staff recommendations, which was requested. And then over the last couple of weeks, we've had different counselors sending in their top 5. So hopefully tonight, the council can have a discussion and then select your top 5 priorities.
I have a question on a couple of the entries in your spreadsheet. Council President Kerry's number 1 is support for housing production. Is that the same as full funding and alignment for housing production that the computer changed to protection for you?
Yeah.
Is that the same thing? Okay. Okay, yeah, it was just that we got written out in full on somebody else's, so I was confused. Got it.
I'm chuckling over here because Counselor Oberst has done this incredible math
I
process.
have done no incredible math.
He has figured out from everybody's response where it all falls, and I'm looking at his cheat sheet here, and I'm just amazed.
I just did a cross-country race and gave 1 point for a first place finish and sort of scored everything to see
Yes.
where a council stood. That's all. I assume they were placed in order. So
We were
that's
told
where
to
they are.
give them in what
Yeah.
order of
Yeah.
importance.
Okay.
Yeah, they may not have been. Counselor
Oh,
McKeel.
okay, well then.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually have a question why we are prioritizing the marijuana tax. And when I looked in the budget, it didn't look like it was actually that much money
Used
that we're getting.
used to be.
But
Right. So Measure 110, prior to Measure 110 changing that, cities received a lot more revenue from the marijuana sales. And so what this is to take a look at that and really analyze that. And it's one thing that'll go back into the general fund. And so that's why I believe that's why staff picked it as a top, that's our second priority, because it could be a revenue source for the general fund, which we obviously really need.
so it looks like.
Just a second. Lane, can you turn your mic off too? Because we can only
Sure.
have a few. It'll cut people out. Thank you.
It looks like right now it's, oh, I have it marked and it's like 19, what? Oh my gosh, okay. No, I can't find it now. But it looked like we wouldn't have that much money compared to the amount of resources we would have by having another prioritization. So it would go up, but it wouldn't go up so much that, like, let's look at climate change versus the support we would get from the state for climate change. And maybe I'm not realizing the sales of marijuana in the city.
It's literally about that it's general fund as opposed to a special fund that most of the other revenue would go to.
Oh, okay.
Counselor Lopez.
Just providing a little context there. I served on the Finance and Taxation Committee with the LOC, albeit I did not make it to the majority of their meetings, but I was there for part of the discussion regarding the marijuana tax and that. My time's up. And page 56, I think, calls it out pretty clearly here. You know, the city saw a 74% reduction in the amount of funds that were coming in from the marijuana tax. And so while it may be a small amount, it's still, you know, those are funds that were going to the cities that no longer are, that should be once again. So, and again, general fund dollars are flexible as opposed to earmarked dollars that have to go to a specific source. That's the context that the committee dealt with when forwarding this as one of the possible priorities.
I understand the general fund, that it goes into the general fund. My concern was we would get a lot more financial support in some of those big ticket items, like a climate change plan. If we prioritize the climate change plan, that's something that's going to be very expensive for us to do, that's going to come out of our general fund versus the amount of money that we would get into the general fund by increasing essentially a small percentage of the marijuana tax. Did I make it more clear this time?
Yeah, that's understandable. You're right. In the giant big picture, I think there's also a certain amount of realism based on what we know the legislature says they're going to focus on in the coming year, which is transportation and education. So even if multiple cities banded together and said, let's start looking at these big picture things that will eventually either ameliorate expenses, huge expenses we expect, or generate revenue, they're not potentially as likely to get attention from the legislature this year. So let's bite off the small ones once or twice.
I understand the logic of the thinking.
Yeah, that's where I'm going with this priority. Thank you, Councilor Ober.
And as I mentioned to our city manager, one of my concerns is if we're asking for an increase in marijuana tax flowing to us, does the legislature reallocate or do they add to the state's take? And every bit that the tax goes up drives that much more of the business underground and out of the dispensaries. And so it might well be counterproductive to seek an increase in the marijuana tax in order to fund more money going to the cities. If the legislature says we'll keep it at 17 and reallocate, that might be a different story, but I don't expect to see that even with changes to 110, because they recognize that the reason 110 had problems was that they didn't adequately fund treatment up front and get that up and running before they said, oh, well, you can just go to treatment. There wasn't any place to go, or it wasn't, fully operational. So I am skeptical at this point on that particular one. On the other hand, we need conceivably a very, very expensive water filtration plant for this city in the foreseeable future. And that was a big part of why I put infrastructure funding as my number one choice.
Yeah, I think there was quite a bit of consensus, and obviously I feel that many of us rely on the expertise of our professional staff. We trust them. We have talked about particularly their priorities that are listed here have been our priorities and have taken up a major amount of discussion from all of us. So I did feel confident myself that those are the things I feel like the legislature will be doing, first of all, no matter what we say, but that these are all super important to us. So there's a lot of interesting concepts in the LOC, but I felt confident with the 5 that were proposed here to be things we have talked about needing in many ways. Councilor Lopez?
Yep, I recognize that I did not complete the priorities survey here. I was out in the wilderness, excused absence. So I recognize that mine aren't listed here, as well as Madam Mayor's, but I also am aligned in supporting the staff recommendation. I think, if something was going to be pulled out or added, I think the behavioral health enhancements is worthwhile talking about. However, I believe that that's a high priority of the governor's office and will happen anyway. So that might just be some dangling low-hanging fruit on behalf of the LOC. So.
And I think probably because probably the majority of cities don't provide behavioral health services. So I'm going with, you're right. We know that's going to be a high priority, Governor, and I'm sure the Association of Oregon Counties will be taking the lead on that particular priority. So.
You know, and you're right. We don't necessarily provide those behavioral health advancements, as it says here. We do have a behavioral clinic in town, which could receive some additional funding conceivably. You know, I sort of looked at this one as more of a global issue rather than a parochial issue here. If you have a school shooting, what is the call? The call is for more mental health professionals. When you have a homeless crisis, what is the call? It's more mental health. And we don't have them. We don't have, I don't think we've got the bandwidth to do all we need to do. And I'm hoping, if that gets carried forward, that there will be some funding at the higher education level that could expedite that, you know, could make some changes in terms of licensing in other states coming to here. We just don't have enough. And that's always the cry.
Yeah, and if you look at what LOC would carry forward, it's very specifically to change the civil commitment process. It has nothing to do with the systemic behavioral health issues or the system or creating access and capacity which is really what we need. Their only thing they were considering would be creating allowing courts to direct people unable to care for themselves into treatment. So that maybe didn't take as high a priority for us as some of these other things, which really do benefit cities. So that's the thing. Big picture, of course, behavioral health affects every one of us, but the very specific thing LOC would legislatively work on may not affect us quite as much. Councilor McKeel.
Yeah, I had looked at the behavioral health enhancements, but maybe it was wishful thinking on my part, but I thought that would be embedded in the shelter and homeless response, because I think we often kind of put all under one umbrella. The people who are homeless, who are struggling with mental health issue, versus people who are homeless because they have that one paycheck away from being homeless. And so having a homeless response that was more addressing some of those mental health issues would be really good. But again, maybe that's wishful thinking.
It's absolutely wonderful, but it's not the specific proposal. Were you on the legislative committee, Rochelle? No. So the legislative committee at LOC takes all these things and comes up with some sort of very specific policies or requests they would move forward. And they have to be very detailed at this point, because I think legislators have to submit things like in a couple of weeks. I mean, there's timelines are rolling, and it's so they're looking at some really specific things. Probably specific cities have requested the LOC to consider, and they get a lot of those in the pot, and they just kind of need to see where to really concentrate their resources. So although that's a big picture thing, there's some real specific little things they're trying to get fixes on. Councilor Carey, and then I'll let you get back down.
Yeah, as I'm looking at this, I think I tallied this in a way that is accurate. I'm not sure, but we had all 5 for infrastructure. You know, we have 5 votes in effect for infrastructure, which matches staff. Transportation, we had 4, which matches staff. Housing, get that housing protection in there. We had 4 for that. We had 4 for the marijuana and 4 for climate. So there's our 5, it seems to me. And we can, you know, because of the nuance and the way they do it, I don't know why we go in more detail than that. And in the order, I don't think it's significant necessarily. I mean, when they get it, they'll crunch it like they want.
That sounds good to me. I'm just going to like vindicate myself of, it wasn't that much wishful thinking with the homeless because it talked about continuum of care, coordinated services. So, and maybe I was implying too much, but it looked like there was a behavioral health model within that they were considering. So, not too much wishful thinking.
Counselor Selena Silver.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would agree with Councilor Carey as well. That seems reasonable and to have that list. And thank you for the explanation, Councilor Lopez and Madam Mayor, about the behavioral health and how that possibly is going to be an agenda item with the governor's office. And I believe when we were talking about the public safety fee, that it was mentioned that the counties are working together as well to try to address this issue. So, so that gives me hope that there'll be some, some addressing this issue. And yeah, I think that's good. I think that list, and thank you, Rochelle, for bringing this forward and for communicating with our leaders in the city. Our staff are really the leaders in our city, and I trust their judgments and their experience. And so I appreciate you doing that for us. Thank you.
All right, so I hear a consensus to move forward the 5 listed in our staff report as the City of Monmouth's vote for LOC legislative focus and priorities. So, all right, thank you. I'm sure others of our colleagues will be pushing a couple more of those, for example, the restoration of recreational immunity, which would also be a positive thing for us, but boy, for some communities, that's going to be a number 1 for sure. So lots of work in there, and they'll probably have plenty of conversations about many of these things. So. All right, that brings us to our reports, and this evening, I just I want to mention that we do have. Today was the first day of school, so everybody watch your driving, watch your, we're back out there where the kiddos, even if they safely bike to school, are on our paths. And particularly if you notice, the City of Independence has worked with ODOT and sort of painted some new crosswalks in places where that did not happen. They're painted as a little island, and that is sort of the idea, that people would be able to cross into the traffic lanes, stand in the little painted island, and then make the second half of the cross as it's safe. That's something that ODOT allowed them to do as a test and potentially could turn into actual refuge islands at some point. But a lot of that is really to help create additional safe crossings of our streets. And then maybe we could get ODOT to pave them, and that would be wonderful as well. Speaking of the legislature, today Rochelle and Suzanne and I had an opportunity to meet with Rep. Evans. We've talked about some of the money that we received for infrastructure development for affordable housing. There was a slight glitch in the way that money was awarded to us, and we need to make a request to get a change done at the legislature to be able to do that. And we met today with him. Also had an opportunity to talk to him about the homeless shelter proposal, because he has been actively engaged in that, particularly with neighbors last year, and sort of some other aspects of that. And so we still have not received an application from Church of the Park. That's supposedly coming this week. And when we do, again, staff will be reviewing that, making sure that it meets codes. We have other folks who look through that, and we have committed to another public process where folks will be able to give us thoughts and input on that actual application. And Representative Evans said he would be engaged in that process as well. So Just want to report on that. We do have, well, you know what? We don't have a couple of board and commission appointments because I still need to make a couple of phone calls. Yes, so we have one. We do have an applicant. You all received the application for Leah Goodlin, potentially from the Arts and Culture Commission. And Councilor Obers apparently wants to speak to them.
I met Leah when Sharon was in her first or second year of teaching at Western. She's retired now, Sharon is. And I was always amazed by her then, and she's even more amazing now. And she made a very deliberate choice to move here with her husband and her grandchild. And she's going to be a real asset, ball of energy. So I would move approval of that appointment.
I second that.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Thank you very much. We'll get Leah on the Arts and Culture Commission and have a Planning Commission appointment. These of our boards and commissions, but now that fall's gearing up, we got to get back at it. But you have something, Councilor
Thank you.
Slinger-Silver?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the Arts and Culture Commission took a little break in the summer. We will meet again on September 19th, so I'll have a report for you after that. And I just want to remind everybody that Hispanic Heritage Month is September 15th through October 15th. And to look out for the street pole banners, the Community Voices banners, and the elementary school artwork that will go on businesses in Monmouth and Independence. So please enjoy that. Take the trolley, take a stroll, read all the books that they have read and the artwork that goes with it. So, so I hope that you enjoy this September 15th through October 15th and learn and have fun. And the library is also putting on some events for Hispanic Heritage Month as well. So I'll let Carol talk about that. Oh, do you want me to? So
Well,
I have a date.
the library board's meeting next week.
Oh,
So, yeah, so
well,
more next council meeting.
they are holding I have it on my calendar. They are holding a Stories from Mexico and Beyond. And that is coming up. Let's see if I wrote it down here. Where is it? The 20th, September 20th at 7 o'clock at the library. And I'm sure they'll have a beautiful display as well. So thank you.
Thank you for covering for me, Councilor Salinas Oliveros. But there's another report coming.
Other boards and commissions, Councilor Obert.
Tree Board comes off hiatus with a meeting on the 19th at Monmouth Power and Light at 6:30. And as I mentioned earlier, the Transportation Commission will have its meeting on the 23rd at 7 at the police station. And those are quarterly meetings unless we have reason to have it more often. So there you go.
Councilor Carey.
Planning Commission meets tomorrow night, and they'll be discussing the code amendments that we initiated tonight. And again, that will come back for a little more in-depth consideration. Right now, we just had to get it initiated. Planning Commission will hash it out and send it back, or send it up the line to us. So that's tomorrow night, 7 o'clock.
And that appears to take us to our city manager's report.
Thank you. So the RFP for the electric rate study, that has been pushed out and response so far has been good. Wade had 4 different contractors call with questions, so we're hoping to get 4 of those. Also, the RFP for the climate action plan is also out, and he's expecting 3 contractors to respond to that with a proposal. The Riddle Road grinding and paving project is scheduled for September 18th. Margaret Johnson, who has been a volunteer at the library amongst other positions, is retiring after 40 years. And so the library is going to have a celebration. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. The Economic Opportunities Assessment Survey has been rolled out, and there's a link on the main page of our website. If you would be so inclined as to respond to that, Suzanne would be very happy. The Welcome to My Town event put on by the MBA is September 24th, and if you're available to volunteer, please let me know. Partnership and Community Living is holding their community appreciation event this Saturday, September 7th, in the park. It is National Senior Center Month. The grocery outlet will be doing a fundraiser at the end of the month for Round Up the Change, which will benefit the Friends of the Senior Center. And the Senior Center held an AARP Smart Driver class last week, and 27 attendees were there. So they were very excited about the turnout. And then Barbara has been trying to get some type of workshop in regards to grief. And so there's going to be a Grief 101 workshop at the Senior Center on September 10th at 10 a.m. And that's all I have.
Yeah, excellent. We can have our Transportation Commission host the AARP Safe Driving.
Mayor Coons,
That's a nice
Mayor
time.
Coons, do not forget Soup and Pie is September 19th also.
Phyllis did not speak into the
I
microphone.
have it on. Soup and Pie will be at the Senior Center on September 19th.
And that's soup and pie, not
Soup and
suit and tie.
Yes. From 11 to 1:30. Yes, sir.
Special semi-annual event here not to be missed.
That's right.
All right. And anything else? Council comments and announcements, Councilor Care.
Annually, I always go to MES on the first day of school because we often get complaints about the dangerous condition and the NASCAR-like conditions that our little children are subjected to. And as in past years, it went very smoothly today. There were, the parents and the people driving through that area are hypersensitive. There's lots of potential for little darters here and there. So everybody's on their best behavior. We had one crossing guard today. I'm not sure whether there'll be more than that, but there will be, the kids will understand a little bit better what, in this case, he was directing, and he will know a little more about, directing people. There'll become a culture around that. But it went very smooth. So should there be any kvetching about that from one man's eye, it went well. It was organized. The buses were courteous. It all went well. And there is a need for some of the no parking zones that Russ talked about. And then, so that's by way of report. And then this one is one that I really don't know what to do about it other than to just as sort of FYI. I've run across and encountered probably 4 houses that are in extreme disrepair, perhaps abandoned. And I just don't know. I mean, it's housing inventory that is not being used. And it looks bad in the community. It does all of the things that, I'm waiting for somebody, a squatter to bust in and take over if they haven't already.
I'm aware of a house, John, that's been empty for quite a long time. And there was a fellow living in a van who came and plugged in because the electricity was still on it.
There you are.
That kind of thing.
So I don't know what what solution we have. I don't want to be a yard policeman, but on the other hand, you've got briars that are here to fill us, It's just, we can do better. And whether or not it's a community initiative that we're all going to look to sort of clean up the neighborhood. City of Portland's got a couple things going on like that I'm just learning about. I don't know what it is. I'm just pointing out what I perceive to be an emerging issue. So I'll just leave it at that.
City Attorney Lane Shutterly.
Well, we do have a couple of code provisions that would respond to this. One is a dangerous building code, and another we have basically a maintenance code that requires properties be kept up to certain standards. I would think that code enforcement probably would be the place to look at. It's always a risk when you go down that road. You don't want to own those buildings eventually. You really want to incentivize the owners to take some responsibility for them. But we do have tools in the code to bring those things to the attention of property owners and to hold them accountable if they fail to bring them into compliance.
And I will point out another attempt that was made actually almost 2 years ago, and that was the MLK Day of Service. That 2 years ago, we had some properties that have been in disrepair or had some graffiti in one case where property owners were unable to take care of maintaining themselves. And we actually had a great turnout of students from Western Oregon. We had community members, and we actually went and did some work on those houses. And so another opportunity, 2024 MLK Day, I don't know if y'all remember, was in the middle of an ice storm. And so that unfortunately was canceled for 2024. Turned out to be my grandson's birthday, but I'm sure we'll be working on that again next year. And those are other opportunities that our code enforcement officer would be on the lookout for when we get that position refilled.
I think one of the things that I'm going to do, just because I said it, so let's come up with a bit of a solution. So I'm going to try to note those and share with Suzanne, and it might be those people could be notified. There is funding, albeit limited, for housing restoration and, to bring things up to speed so they could be utilized. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm gonna start making a list.
Yeah, or Suzanne or the police department, since that's where code enforcement resides.
If it were a matter of I guess I was thinking of notifying the property owner that there may be funds available for them to solve it on their own.
Through other agencies, not.
Yeah, oh yeah, and not through us. But Polk County's got
Polk
County's got a program that for that, and we don't get a hell of a lot of it, but. Okay.
Counselor Albert.
And there are property owners in town who have multiple properties that are standing vacant. I don't understand it, but there you go. So John, earlier when we had the Arts Commission here, you mentioned bike racks. And I commented how this group has really taken seriously what they do. We have a series of bike racks in town that have the old city logo etched into them that were placed with the help of a grant from Cycle Oregon. And the Arts Commission at that time had no input at all on those. This Arts Commission would put its foot down on a thing like that and say, oh, no, we got to have a review on these. And the other one I wanted to point out is, I don't know how many of you caught it. Did you see the cover of their brochure, the lovely colors? Did you make the connection? Those colors are all from our logo. And so this is a different way that our logo can come into play, is by using those colors. And yeah, it is. They did a really nice job with that cover, and I just wanted to make sure everybody saw that.
Kudos on the cover goes to Melody.
Yeah, I was aware of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Melody did the lion's share of the editing on that
Yes.
brochure as well.
Yes.
So, again, congratulations to them on that whole effort. Good job.
Counselor Selena Silver.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to mention the flyer that we all got about the cultural harvest happening through Mid-Willamette Valley Pop-Up BIPOC Farmers Market at the Main Street Park. And it's going to be September 15th and 29th from 10 to 2. So I just wanted to mention that since it was in front of us, and hopefully there's a lot of people who show up. Oh, at the Main Street Park, yes. Thank you.
All right. And any last council comments?
Motion to adjourn.
And all in favor of adjournment, please signify